An 8-year-old girl went outside to play. Same street, same neighborhood, same afternoon. She had done it 100 times before. She never came home. For 7 days, the entire neighborhood searched for her. Police searched the woods, volunteers searched the streets, and one teenage boy who lived just a few houses down, he searched too. He walked with the volunteers, he talked with the neighbors, he even stood next to her grieving family while they begged people for help. He already knew exactly where she was, and where she was inside his bedroom. This is the story of 8-year-old Maddie Clifton, and I promise you, nothing about this story is easy to hear. She was 8 years old, just 8, the kind of age where the world still feels magical and safe and full of possibility. She lived with her family in Jacksonville, Florida, in a quiet residential neighborhood, the kind of place where kids rode their bikes until the streetlights came on, and parents didn't think twice about letting them play outside unsupervised. It was the kind of neighborhood that felt protected from the kind of things you see on the news. Maddie fit right into that world. She was full of energy, always smiling, always moving. People who knew her described her as the kind of child who could walk into a room full of strangers and immediately make friends. She trusted people. She was open and warm and completely, heartbreakingly unguarded in the way that only children can be, before the world teaches them to be careful. She spent her afternoons doing exactly what kids in that neighborhood did, riding her bike up and down the street, knocking on friends' doors without calling first, showing up wherever the fun was. Her family never worried when she went outside because she had done it hundreds of times before, always coming back when she was supposed to, always safe, always home. On November 3rd, 1998, Maddie went outside to play just like any other afternoon. She was 8 years old. She had no idea that this time she wasn't coming home. The afternoon passed the way afternoons do in quiet neighborhoods. Kids outside, parents inside, the normal sounds of a normal day. And then evening came, and Maddie didn't come home. At first, her mother didn't panic. She stepped outside and called Maddie's name, fully expecting to hear her daughter's voice answering from somewhere down the street. There was nothing. She checked the nearest houses, asked the kids still playing outside if they had seen her. Nobody knew where she was. That's the moment everything shifted. That quiet, creeping feeling when something that should be simple, your child coming home for dinner, suddenly isn't. When you call their name in the street just gives you silence back. When the neighbor shakes their head and says they haven't seen her, and you feel something cold move through you that no parent should ever have to feel. Her family called the police. Officers arrived quickly, and the questions started immediately. When was the last time anyone saw her? Who was she playing with? Did she ever wander outside the neighborhood alone? Patrol cars lined the street, and neighbors began coming outside to see what was happening. Within hours, the search had begun. Police checked the nearby woods and empty lots. They went behind houses and searched through yards. Volunteers joined almost immediately. Friends, neighbors, people who barely knew the Clifton family but showed up anyway because that's what communities do when a child goes missing. Flashlights moved through the darkness that night while Maddie's parents stood in the street, watching, hoping, praying that someone would come running back with good news. Among the people helping search was a 14-year-old boy from the neighborhood. His name was Josh Phillips. He lived just a few houses away from Maddie. He knew her family, knew the same street she played on every day. He joined the search groups, walked alongside volunteers, and talked to neighbors just like everyone else. Nobody looked at him twice. Why would they? He was just a quiet, shy teenager trying to help find a little girl. At least, that's what everyone thought.
One day passed with no sign of Maddie. Then 2, then 3. The search expanded with every passing hour. More officers arrived. Helicopters circled overhead. Maddie's face appeared on the local news, then the national news. Flyers with her photo were taped to every street sign, every store window, every surface that people's eyes might land on. Her parents stood in front of cameras, trying to hold themselves together, their voices breaking in the way that only a parent searching for a missing child's voice can break, with a kind of pain that has no bottom to it. And the entire time, the neighborhood kept searching. They searched the woods again. They walked the streets again. They knocked on doors that had already been knocked on. Because when a child is missing, you don't stop. You go back to the same places, because maybe this time something will be different. Maybe this time someone will remember something they forgot to mention. Maybe this time she'll just be there, sitting somewhere safe, wondering what all the fuss is about. 7 days passed, and then something happened inside the Phillips house that nobody expected. Josh's mother was in his bedroom when she noticed something odd about his waterbed. It looked uneven, like something underneath the mattress wasn't sitting right. She assumed it might be a leak. Waterbeds sometimes did that, but when she got closer, she noticed something else. A smell. The kind of smell that makes you stop completely. The kind that your body understands before your mind does. She called for help. When the bed frame was moved, the 7-day search for Maddie Clifton came to an end. Her body had been hidden inside the base of the waterbed, inside Josh Phillips' bedroom, in the same house that police had already walked through, in the same room where this 14-year-old boy had been sleeping every night, going about his days and walking outside to help search for the little girl he had hidden right there under his own bed. The safe neighborhood that had always felt protected from the worst things in the world had been hiding the worst thing in the world the entire time. When police confirmed that the body found inside the Phillips house was Maddie Clifton, the neighborhood went completely silent. Not the kind of silence that comes from peace, the kind that comes from shock, from grief, from realizing that the thing you were most afraid of was true, and that it was even closer than you imagined. Parents pulled their children inside without explaining why. Neighbors stood in their driveways speaking in low voices. The Clifton family, who had spent 7 days holding on to hope with everything they had, now had to face the truth that no family should ever have to face. Josh Phillips was brought in for questioning that same day. He sat across from investigators, looking nervous but not dramatically so. He gave short answers, kept his head down, spoke quietly. At first, he stuck to the same story he had told everyone. He didn't know anything. He had been outside helping search. He hadn't seen anything unusual. But the evidence inside his bedroom made his story impossible to believe. Maddie had been hidden in his room. She hadn't put herself there. Someone had carried her, hidden her, and kept that secret for 7 days while her family fell apart on the street outside. Investigators came back with more questions, more pressure. They told him the truth was already out, and the only thing left was for him to explain what really happened. His answers started coming slower. His timeline stopped making sense, and after hours of questioning, the quiet teenager who had stood next to Maddie's grieving family while they begged the neighborhood for help, finally started talking. He told police that on the afternoon Maddie disappeared, she had come to his house while he was home alone. She came into his bedroom, the way kids in that neighborhood did all the time, the way Maddie did with everyone because she trusted the world completely. According to Josh, she accidentally broke something in his room, and the sound of it sent a wave of panic through him. He was afraid of his father, afraid of getting in trouble, and that fear, according to him, turned into something else entirely. He picked up a baseball bat. He hit her.
She fell to the floor, crying and screaming, and instead of stopping, instead of running for help, instead of calling an adult, instead of doing any of the things that every instinct should have told him to do, he made a decision that he could never take back. He picked up a knife, and he stabbed her. Investigators listening to the confession later said the most disturbing part wasn't just what he admitted, it was how he admitted it. His voice stayed low and almost completely flat the entire time. No crying, no visible remorse, just quiet words and long pauses, like he was describing something that happened to someone else a long time ago.
When she stopped moving, he dragged her body across the room. He opened the base of his waterbed. He placed her inside. He put the mattress back on top. He cleaned what he could. And then he went on with his life. That same night, while Maddie's mother was outside calling her daughter's name into the darkness, while neighbors were walking through the woods with flashlights, while the Clifton family was falling apart from the inside out, Josh Phillips was in his bedroom, a few feet away from Maddie's body, sleeping. I want you to think about something for a moment. For 7 full days, Maddie's parents woke up every morning not knowing where their daughter was. They went to sleep every night, not knowing if she was cold or scared or hurt or calling for them somewhere they couldn't reach her. They held on to hope the way drowning people hold on to anything they can find, because hope was all they had, because giving up on hope meant accepting something they couldn't accept. In every single one of those days, Josh Phillips came outside. He stood in the search groups. He walked the streets with volunteers. He looked people in the eye. He may have looked Maddie's parents in the eye. And not once, not for a single second, did he say a word. He let her family suffer through 7 days of not knowing, when he was the only person in the world who had the answer they were desperately looking for. He knew exactly where Maddie was, and he chose every single morning to wake up and say nothing. That is the part of this story that stays with you. Not just what he did to Maddie, as horrific as that is, but what he chose to do to her family in the days that followed. The cruelty of that silence, the deliberate daily decision to let people who loved her keep searching while he walked among them. Maddie Clifton was 8 years old. She went outside to play because she trusted the world. She trusted the neighborhood she grew up in. She trusted the people she knew. And that trust is what made her vulnerable to the very last moment of her life. In 1999, Josh Phillips was found guilty of first-degree murder. He was 14 years old at the time of the crime, which made the sentencing one of the most debated aspects of the entire case. The prosecution argued that regardless of his age, he had made a series of deliberate decisions, not just in the moment of violence, but in the 7 days that followed, that showed a level of calculated behavior that couldn't be overlooked. The defense argued that he was a frightened child who panicked after an accident and made catastrophic choices out of fear. The jury sentenced him to life in prison. Years later, because of his age at the time of the crime, his case was reviewed and the possibility of future parole was introduced. That decision was controversial for many people, especially for the Clifton family, who had already lost more than any family should ever lose. No verdict changes what happened to Maddie. No sentence gives her family back the daughter who went outside on a November afternoon and never came home. No courtroom decision makes the 7 days of searching feel less brutal, or makes the moment Maddie's mother found out the truth feel less devastating. Justice, in cases like this, is never actually justice. It's just the closest thing to it that we have.
Cases like Maddie's are the ones that stay with you long after the video ends. Not because they're the most complicated, not because the motive was some grand, twisted plan, but because of how ordinary everything looked right up until the moment it wasn't. A normal neighborhood, a normal afternoon, a little girl doing what she always did, going where she always went, trusting the people she had always trusted. And somewhere in the middle of all that ordinary, something went terribly, irreversibly wrong. Maddie Clifton was 8 years old. She was full of life and energy and the kind of pure, open-hearted trust that children have before the world takes it from them. She deserved to grow up. She deserved to ride her bike down that street for years and years and years. She deserved a whole life. She didn't get it. So if this story does anything, if it reminds even one parent to check in a little more often, or reminds one person to pay attention to the quiet kids who don't seem to be doing anything wrong, then maybe telling it means something. Pay attention to what's close, because sometimes the most dangerous thing isn't far away in the dark. Sometimes it's right there in the neighborhood, right there in the house you already walked past. Rest in peace, Maddie Clifton. You were only 8 years old, and you deserved so much more.